Hey guys, thank you so much for watching my video. I want to do a quick disclaimer before we start, and that disclaimer is that I tried a new recording software for video or my desktop, and I did not realize that it was not recording the menus as they popped up. So you'll have to just listen to my description of what menus are popping up and what options I'm choosing. The next time I do a video like this, I'll do some experimenting to make sure I can get those sub-menus to pop up. But in any case, here is a video on how I do my edits, and the type of editing I'm doing in this video is sort of a mid-grade edit, right? So what I want is quality with a little bit faster of a time frame than I would normally spend if I was doing a very detailed beauty edit. But it's also much better quality than just using one of the face smoothing softwares that just kind of turn people's skin into plastic and look super fake. So anyway, let's get into the video. Alright, so the first thing I do is get my patch tool, and I go around grabbing anything that kind of pops out to my eye. Again, I'm not trying to get every single little blemish with the patch tool, just the things that catch my eye as I'm moving around looking at the photo. Getting a good patch layer is important as your first step. So after I do the patching, I start doing the dodge and burning. So in order to get a good dodge and burn, I've found that using a black and white layer and bringing down the red's brightness and bringing up the brightness of the yellows helps add some contrast to show areas that I might want to come in and just use my soft brush set to 2% with 0% hardness, and just get in there and start evening up the skin. And again, I'm not trying to make everything perfect like I would with a real long beauty edit, but I do want to grab the things that just kind of, if they catch my eye, you know, within a couple seconds of looking around, I go through and I hit it and try to even it out, because this is not going to be the last step to the skin edit. But doing this particular step does allow you to preserve a lot more detail without giving someone a super plastic look. So don't skip the dodge and burn section here. You'll see me kind of go back and forth between black and white and color sometimes, looking to see what the picture looks like. At this point, I'll also combine the layers and then move on to the next step. What I'm doing up here is I've actually created an action. You can't see the menu, but it's a frequency separation action that allows me to get those layers there quickly instead of having to do them manually every time. If you don't know how to do frequency separation, I suggest looking up some YouTube videos. There's a bunch of really great ones about it. Alright, so here I'm doing the normal kind of Gaussian blur method on the color layer. I use that on the wider areas of the skin that don't have any kind of light directionality. Now, when I encounter an area, for instance, like the nose or the cheekbones, where you can kind of see a streak of highlight or a streak of darkness, then I will use a different blur method in order to preserve the highlights and shadows as much as I can, because one of the downsides of using frequency separation is it reduces contrast. Alright, so here you see on the nose, there's a highlight on the nose, so I'm going to grab that and then I'm going to use motion blur, and then there's going to be a little circle that pops up that allows you to change the angle. So I'll use the angle, I'll match the angle to the angle of the light and do the motion blur that way, so I can still get skin smoothing, but I'm preserving a bit more of the shadows and highlights. Otherwise, again, when I'm in areas that don't really have any directionality, it's just huge swaths of skin, then I will just use the Gaussian blur method. Arm here, I'm going to use the directional motion blur method, because you do have some directionality with the arm. But you know, things like the shoulder, the ribs, stuff like that, where at the moment there's not really any directionality, then I'll use Gaussian blur. Here's another one where I'm going to use the motion blur to preserve the shadows. And you'll see me just kind of continue on getting the rest of the body here. Alright, so I'm just kind of checking my progress to see what it looks like. At this point, I'm adding a blank layer above the color layer because I want to come through and even out the skin tone on the face a bit more. I don't like to do all of the evening through dodge and burn and through the blur method here. I like to also create this layer above the color layer, sample some skin tone that I like, and paint it over some of the shadows that I want to get rid of. The reason is that when you use the dodge and burn method to get rid of all of your shadows or to change the skin, it tends to have a strange color cast to it, I found. But if I combine a little bit of the dodge and burn with a bit of this skin tone correction through the frequency separation with a blank layer above, I think that the results end up looking a lot more natural than just doing one of the methods on its own. Okay, so zooming out here, I'm going to kind of take a look and see what I think of the progress so far. I think it looks pretty good. Get a little bit better. I probably could have stopped, but I have a tendency to continue fiddling with things. I do suggest stopping to check your work periodically because it's easy to go overboard sometimes. Far eye, I'm going to go ahead and touch that up too. Bring some of that shadow back in line with the rest of her face so there's not so much contrast. It's looking really nice. Okay, so I'm going ahead and saving my progress here. Obviously, you can't really see the menu pop up, but you can see the progress bar at the bottom left-hand corner as it saves. After I've made some decent progress, I like to continuously save my work so that if my computer crashes or the program locks up or something, then I don't lose all the work that I've done. Okay, what you can't see here is that now I am running the Imagenomic program on the color layer only, and what that's going to do is kind of give me one of those plastic face layers that I can then put a mask on and use my brush to just kind of paint it in areas where I think it needs a little bit of help, and I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time doing it like I would with a full beauty edit. And so I'll come in and just lightly paint it, which allows me to have a much more controlled look so that you're not getting that full plastic look on the face, but you are getting some of the benefits of speed from the program. A lot of the places I use this tend to be the edges of the face along the hair and the forehead. So you'll see me go through here and just touch those places up. And I'll do the same thing on areas that the Gaussian blur just doesn't work that well on. And again, lots of edges, I like to use it. I should probably fast forward through some of this stuff, but I'm going to leave it in because some people might find it interesting. You can go ahead and skip through if you don't want to watch me smooth out all the different areas with this particular tool. But this is essentially a white brush, 100% opacity, I believe, with 100% hard or 80% hardness, sorry. Just so that it doesn't create too much blurring effect when you get close to the edges. And what I mean by that is sometimes if you have your softness too high, then you can get some bleeding between the background and whatever it is that you're smoothing out, and it looks kind of fuzzy. So I like to use the harder brush when applying this tool. And also, since we're working only on the color layer here, we can still preserve a lot of the detail that would be included on the texture layer. So we can work on cleaning up the texture completely separately. Again, that's one of my biggest pet peeves with these face tuning type programs, is that they just eliminate all the texture, or they make the texture look very bizarre. Okay, so here I'm just kind of checking my work. Rarely do I think one round of this is enough. So I'm going to create a blank layer, and then I'm going to copy the mask that we just painted up onto it, and then go ahead and merge the two color layers. We're going to run the portraiture on the color layer again. Only this time we're not going to have to go through and paint everything again. We're just going to be able to copy our mask from the blank layer down onto the new layer. Okay, just waiting for that to get generated. Okay, the portraiture layer has been generated, so here we are dragging the mask on top of it, and I can go ahead and merge those two color layers again. Okay, so now we can work specifically on the texture layer to handle any texture that we think might need a little bit of work. And what I do to take care of that is duplicate the texture layer and then invert it, which is where you saw that blur come in. And then you throw a mask on it and you grab yourself a brush. I put it usually around 10%. Again, I still like to keep it pretty hard so that it's only affecting the areas I'm painting it over. So I can come through here and get rid of any, overly distracting texture, but leave behind the texture that keeps the skin looking like skin. Okay. And again, if you don't want to watch me go through all of this, you're welcome to skip ahead. But some people might find value in seeing the types of texture that I like to address with this tool and the types of texture I leave behind. This is another one of those situations where one round generally isn't enough for my taste, and so you'll see me go through here, address all the texture that I think needs it, and then I'll merge all the layers together and do a whole new frequency separation layer to address any other stubborn texture that I want to eliminate. Okay, and I think I will just fast forward a little bit here. Okay, so I merged those layers. I created a brand new frequency separation layer. And again, I'm coming in to deal with the texture. So we're just going to go through and hit some of the more stubborn areas that need just a tad bit more softening. And this process generally doesn't take that long because most of it gets taken care of in the very first application. Alright, and so one of the other things I'm going to do is take a look at that transition between the light and shadows and probably soften it up a bit since I have this frequency separation open. So you'll see here I'm just kind of circling, running the Gaussian blur, just giving it a little bit less harsh of a transition there. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and merge all those layers together, create another frequency separation layer, and this time we're going to duplicate the texture layer without inverting it, put a mask on it, and then we're going to use that just to add a bit of clarity / sharpness to the eyes and lips. So here I am coming in, just kind of painting a bit onto the eyes. And then once I'm done with the eyes, I'm going to go down and do the same thing with the lips. you know, this is sort of a matter of taste. I like to bring up the sharpness a bit without it being too crazy. Okay, we're just going to kind of check and see before and after a bit. And I think it looks good. I think it looks really nice. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and merge these layers again. Okay. And going ahead and saving my progress, since I accomplished quite a bit since the last save. Okay, and right now I ran some dodge and burn, and I'm just going to go ahead and add back some of the contrast that was lost through the whole skin cleaning progress. So I'm going to go ahead and I usually just under the cheekbone, I add a little bit of shadow there, and just above the cheekbone I'll add a bit of a highlight, and that just helps make the cheekbones pop a bit. She already has fantastic cheekbones, so it doesn't really take much. And I'm not trying to make this look unnatural, I'm just really trying to add back the contrast that was already there. So here in the shoulders, I'm going to add the highlights back where they were, and I'll go and just kind of deepen the shadows a little bit so that they look more natural, more like what they originally were. And I'll usually hit, you know, kind of edges of the arms, the spine, clavicles, shoulder blades, anywhere where there's a distinct contrast between shadows and highlights. There we go. And then the Cupid's bow, kind of hit that as well. Add that back in. I like to hit the lips as well. And then there is a little bit of a darker shadow on the cheekbone here that I just want to smooth out a bit, make it a little bit less contrasty because it's in such a small area. Okay. Adding a little bit of pop to the eyes, adding some more highlights to the nose. We lost a little bit of that contrast on the neck, so I added it back. Some people may not like that, but I do. And then checking our before and after. And man, that looks really good. Okay, I just kind of start top to bottom as I'm toggling it on and off, looking to make sure that my contrast looks a little bit natural and I haven't gone overboard with it. Here I'm just evening out some of the skin tones on the ribs. Okay. Double check everything. Okay. So I'm gonna do a little bit more on the shoulder here. Okay. Good. Okay. Go ahead and do a little bit more on the nose. Get some of those details in. I think we're just about done with this. Let's see. Okay, a little more pop on the lips. Let's see how it looks. Oh yeah, that looks great. Okay. Usually zoom in and out a little bit each time. And over here, I'm going to go ahead and combine these layers. So now they're all merged. I'm just going to add a little bit more contrast. What I'm doing here is adding this layer, making it black and white, changing it over to soft light, and then usually bring this down to around 10%, and that just adds a bit more natural contrast to the image. I love this method of adding contrast. I know some people prefer the curves method, but this is sort of my thing. I like using the black and white layer. Okay, so now we have the skin where I want it. I'm using this color tool, the infinite color tool, and again, you guys can't see the pop-up, but essentially a little menu pops out with a button in the middle, and it allows you to just generate random colors until you find one that inspires you or that you like. In my case, I usually combine a couple different of the color looks that it generates and merge them together. So here I am, just again repeatedly pushing the button, seeing what kind of colors it's coming up with. Some of them are terrible, some of them are nice. I never leave them, I almost never leave them at 100% opacity. Generally, I'll kind of bring it down to make it more subtle because all these looks are pretty bold. So, if you haven't used the infinite color panel, it is kind of a neat tool. I like to use it just when I'm experimenting. Otherwise, I will use some gradients as my color grading of choice. Okay, I don't want you guys to have to sit through live speed of me kind of playing around with different color options, but you know, spread the video up. You can see how many times I'm kind of pushing the button looking for different options. In the end, I settle with about 2 different looks that I like that I think will look good combined together, and I go ahead and reduce each of them to about 15% opacity, and then group them together so that I can kind of see them. If I want to turn it on and off, you know, to see the entire effect of the color grade, I can do that. So here you see me just, you know, merging the two together. Okay, and then checking it on and off. I think it is subtle but very pleasant. So I'm good with that color. Now I'm just kind of taking a look at the overall image, trying to decide if there's something else that I want to do with it. And I do think that I want to add a little bit more contrast overall to the image. And so what I'm doing now is kind of throwing in a curve layer that darkens it, and I'm going to throw in this gradient mask here. It kind of follows the natural direction of the light. It takes a little bit of playing with it to get it where I'm happy with it. And obviously this is a matter of taste, so if you wanted to do something like this, you could. And you just put it where you like it. Okay, and I'm keeping it underneath the color layer that I just created so that the color is affecting this as well. I move it to soft light. I just prefer the way it looks with soft light, especially since I'm going to lower the opacity on it. Okay. Cool. I think that looks great. Like I said before, I have trouble not fiddling with things even after I'm happy with them, so that's what I do here as well. Okay, last step is I'm going to go ahead and throw in some noise. I have an action that I created that adds, basically combines all the layers from below and then applies a 60% opacity noise layer. And the reason I like to add a noise layer on top for most of my images is banding. So anytime I have a clean background like this and I've done any kind of adjustments to the lighting, there's the possibility that you could see some banding when you export it to JPEG and upload it to like Facebook or Instagram. And I found that just having that one extra step of throwing some noise in there either reduces or eliminates banding when I post the image. So here's some before and afters. I don't think it's a huge difference, but I do think it looks a lot better. And then here's the exported JPEG. Thank you all so much for watching this. If you have any specific questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments. You can also follow me over on Instagram if you want to see more of my work. It is under DG Young Photos. All right, until next time, have a good one.